Please state your name and affiliation.
Suzanne Fortier, I'm principal of McGill University.
Could you give us a summary of your scientific background?
I did a degree in my junior college, that is the Cégep in Quebec, with a concentration in the science, physical sciences. And after that, I came to McGill University, where I did a Baccalaureate of Science, a BSc, in crystallography, and then from my BSc went into a PhD program also in crystallography.
What do you do now at McGill?
I'm the principal and vice chancellor, which is that I have the great privilege of being part of this university as a leader and administrators. And I would say as a leader, what it means is really having your eyes open, your ears open, seeing what this community can do, what are its aspirations, and helping to make that happen in whichever way you can.
So what's your day-to-day like?
Oh, there's never the same thing. I interact with a lot of people on a day-to-day. Some is with students. Some is with the Board of Governors, people who are involved with the Senate. I meet with people outside of the university, friends, alumni of McGill, as well as member of government. So there's never 2 days that are the same.
How is diversity currently addressed at McGill?
Well, McGill has always had, I think, a very strong support and promotion of diversity. And this was true, actually, when I was a student. There were students coming from all over the world to study at McGill. So we have, I would say, in our DNA, an environment that is highly diverse. I think where we've moved, though, is understanding the difference between diversity and inclusion. And that means not only welcoming people, but making sure that what they bring that is different from their own culture, their own background, has a real influence and impact on the university.
So what are some plans or initiatives to improve diversity going forward here at McGill?
Plans and initiative, of course, one of the probably the most recent activity has been in the task force for Indigenous studies and Indigenous students, because we know and we certainly have heard that many people coming from the Indigenous community do not find in most universities, and that is true at McGill, an environment that is really welcoming to them, and an environment in which they can fully contribute. So that's been, I think, a very important initiative, recent initiative of McGill that I would highlight. But there are many, many more, of course, but this is one that I would highlight.
Tell us more about your journey through science and academia. How did your interest in science develop?
I got interested in science very early on, I think as a kid, maybe 8, 9-year-old. And then when I was in secondary school, which was an unusual school because it was a convent taught by nuns, I was very excited with my first chemistry course. Of course, I've had maths. Maths is part of the curriculum from the beginning, but the first science that was outside of the more regular curriculum was chemistry. And I think I was very lucky. I had a fantastic professor of chemistry, and she spotted that I was really interested in the topic and really encouraged me. So that was early on. And then, of course, I came to McGill, which was, I cannot describe what I found here because it was so much more than I ever expected. You know, I was coming from a small village in Quebec, Francophone. I thought, well, this is one of the great universities in Canada. I had no clue that it was not only a university for Canadians, but it was a university with people from all over the world. And then very early on, because I chose such a different program, crystallography, there weren't many students in crystallography, so McGill had recruited giants in the field, really people who were the top in the world in the field of crystallography to McGill. And they took really good care of me because I was a student in the field, and so I was nurtured by some of the best people in the world. And it makes a huge impression on you when you're a student to see that your professors are part of this incredible community that includes many Nobel Prize. So, having dinner here in Montreal with people who had won the Nobel Prize because they were friends of my professor, being taken to international conferences because my professors were so much at the top places internationally. So, and then when I left McGill, that opened the door for me to work in a laboratory of one of the persons that I thought was the best in my field, in what I wanted to do specifically in research. And he won the Nobel Prize, so that was also very exciting because, before you win the Nobel Prize, of course, you've built this kind of research area that is groundbreaking research that is really beyond what other people are doing, and that means I was in the laboratory where people from all over the world were coming to learn what we were doing, and it was really exciting. So I've had a lot of surprises and excitements, and I think has really fueled my own excitement throughout my career, is being around people like that who are not afraid to go into what we call sometimes higher risk research, because if you're doing something that is out of the norm, it's a bit higher risk, but who really advances our fields and have the great breakthroughs.
So what about your pathway to becoming the principal of McGill?
Well, I tell people, because when I was a student at McGill, I didn't even know there was a position that was called principal. I certainly didn't know who was in the position. And frankly, it wasn't part of my environment, because I was coming in as a francophone and having to survive every day in an environment that was quite different, and learning in a language that was quite different. So I didn't think about it. And I never thought, in fact, that I would be here, because certainly we tend to think that if we do a PhD at a particular university, that's almost a guarantee that you'll never work there, because we try to recruit people bringing different perspectives, so we don't usually hire our own students. So I never thought of coming to McGill. It's only later in life that that was presented to me, and it's home. And it's home in a very deep way, because all that I've been able to do in my life, not only in my career, but in my life, in a big way, I attribute to my education here at McGill. So I know what a great education looks like, and it is, I think, something that is a great but also very big responsibility to make sure that people have the kind of education I had, the kind of opportunities that McGill opened doors for me, and making sure that we can offer a learning experience here that is really a great one for all our students.
Were you always a leader?
I never thought of myself actually as being a leader until quite late. I didn't realize that when I was president of my class in the convent where I studied, and I remember organizing a little winter festival. So I didn't think of this as leadership. I just thought, this is something we do together, rally a few people to help, and we put that together. Actually, that was quite a big deal in a convent to have a winter festival, I can tell you that. But then later on, when I was a young professor at Queen's University, I was recruited to do a few things, and leadership is something that I think you build step by step. You might have some skills and some qualities. Often you don't even know that you do, and then you are given opportunity to build your leadership. And it often start in small ways and small responsibility, and then you get bigger and bigger as you gain experience. And again, I've always been surrounded by people who were very good at that magic combination, that sweet spot of letting me take initiatives, but at the same time being there to nurture me and making sure that I was moving in the right direction and protecting me, if you want, from the inexperience that can sometimes make you do something that is not quite great. So I've always had, I think, many people like that surrounding me, including And I will mention him because he was a McGillian. When I was at Queen's, I spent 11 years as a vice principal there, first in the research portfolio and then in the academic portfolio. And the person who was principal was Bill Leggett, who's quite a legend here at McGill, a great, great McGillian. And Bill was exactly like that, a perfect person to work with, work under, because he gave me plenty of room, but also was always there to make sure that I wasn't going to do something stupid. And so I thought that was, you need that kind of balance, and very few people have that great capacity to be nurturers and mentors in that way.
It's really good to hear about all the good experiences you've had, but what were some difficulties you faced along the way?
People always ask that question. I haven't had that many difficulties. I remember being disappointed. I'll tell you one, being disappointed because my program was in geology, so a lot of my friends were going off to the field in the summer. And in those days, people didn't think it was a great idea to have a young woman go in the field, up north, camping for 3 months in the summer. So these opportunities were not there for me, but I had a great job in the lab here doing research right in my second year at McGill. So frankly, it was a minor disappointment, if you want. There are times, I think, and now I'm seeing less of that, but there are times when people thought that women, because, not all women, but certain women, and I would put myself in that group, might be not able to be leaders because we might be seen as being too nurturing or caring, and people interpret that as being too soft and not being able to take the tough decision and so on. I think we're way past that now, but I certainly have seen that earlier in my career where people would think, well, she's good, but maybe she's too soft. Or the other thing I've seen, and that one we still have problems with, we tend to look at women as not being quite ready yet, too young. And I've been in many, many search committees, of course, because of what I've done in my past. And you take two people with essentially the same path, similar curriculum, and often the woman is viewed as being almost there. Give her a few more years and she'll be ready for the job. And the man will be seen as, he was ready for it. He'll gain experience. So there's been a little bit of that. I think I've seen that, certainly.
You try to fight for the women on these search committees then? I'm sure you see...
I always, what I do, because I know that, it's a bias, and it may be a normal bias. People don't like to take unnecessary risk, which is understandable. And what I do in those situations, because now I'm off in the chair, is let's look at the evidence. I'm very scientific, I guess. Let's look at the evidence. Let's look at what this person has done. Let's compare with the evidence. Let's not leave our gut feeling direct us. The other thing, of course, is let's make sure that women are giving opportunity to prove that they can take on these positions. So when you work with women in your team, give them responsibility, give them opportunities to be leaders. You don't have to grab all the leadership. Not only you don't have to, but you can't. I mean, there's no way a person can be leader of everything. So everybody in a team has a chance to exercise and to demonstrate and to build their own leadership, and we need to make sure that we make room for that.
So were there any personal experiences where you felt you were treated differently because you were a woman?
Not too much. I've mentioned some already. I was too young for a while, but now I think I've way past the point of being too young. I did experience that she might be good, but she's too young. I did experience that, I'm sure. But I've also been very trusty of people. That's, I think, something that is part of me. I'm trusting of people. I think that people try to make the best decision possible. And I've always thought, because of course, like most people, I've applied for jobs I didn't get. And I've always thought, well, I thought I was ready. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am not ready. So I'm going to trust them to have made the right decision. And eventually, I'll continue to do things that I like. I'm excited about what I'm doing now, or what is. There will be another opportunity. And actually, now that I'm towards the later part of my career, I'm grateful in many ways for the jobs I didn't get, and committees that decided, no, leave her a little bit more time. Sometimes I think they might have been right, because it's one thing for a small group of people to think that maybe it's a bit of a risk, but eventually, if you do get the job, you're going to be in an environment where a lot of people will be looking at what you're doing, what you're accomplishing, and maybe indeed they will be difficult situations.
Do you think trust is an important characteristic to being a good leader?
I think so. I think you have to trust that people want the best of themselves and for others, that they want to build a great community. We have examples that show that this is not always the case, but for the most part, I think people want to be building great communities. And I think we have to trust that there's a fundamental good in human being, and that fundamental good increasingly is not there just for the local community, but for a much larger global community. And I trust that. I trust that people want the best. Before I'm proven otherwise, I go with the assumption that if people are bringing advice or criticism, it's because they want our university to be better. That's where it comes from, and I appreciate that.
What are some positive experiences you've had as a woman in science?
Oh, so many. Because, of course, earlier on, I was a bit of a minority. Not only woman, science, young and francophone. And so that opened a lot of doors that I would have never even imagined being asked to participate in some studies or projects and so on that probably would have never come my way. And so, as I've always said, when you're different, of course it might sometimes close some doors to you, but it opens just as many, if not more, doors. And the trick, and I think the rest, the thing you need to do is give your best to whatever is asked of you, and you will continue to see many doors open, and I've certainly seen that.
Have you seen much improvement for women in science?
Yes, but still a long way to go. Of course, I look at the numbers, I look at the statistics. I did so when I was president of NSEC. Every competition, I would look at the statistics of the results, gender statistics, and so on. So we were seeing some progress. Where I'm most excited is seeing progress in women being at the top of their field and really being groundbreakers for their field. And when I was at NSEC, this was reflected in particular through a special program that's called Accelerator. When you see a researcher that's really doing something that might change their field, NSEC would provide them money on the spot, to accelerate their program. And there we could see that women were doing very well. In fact, we had years, I don't know recently, but where there were more women disproportionately from the pool winning these accelerators. That's very important. So we see progress. I check also how we're hiring people in our professors. So, of course, it used to be that women were not well represented, numbers of 20, 25. We're almost reaching parity in hiring, so that's great. I look also, of course, in leaders in our faculties. We have many senior leaders in our university, deans, and also vice principals who are women. But we need to do more. And where I see some still difficulties is in providing the kind of support that women need to be leaders at an earlier time in their lives, because if you look, for example, in universities and you look at people who are heads of departments, you won't see many women. And it's probably something we ought to have expected, because being head of department is often a position that you will assume sort of at mid-career. And for many women, it's not possible. They have too much work at home to take care of, plus their own profession and their research and so on, so they don't have the time. And so that's part of why I think the progression to leadership is often slower for women, because they have that period where their family is still young, where they cannot necessarily assume those positions. So I think we need to figure out better on how we can provide the kind of environment that will allow people to take on these leadership positions. When I was at NSERC, I would look at that also from the perspective of who was leading the networks of centers of excellence, the strategic networks, who were in the NSERC Industrial Research Chair, and very few women. Not surprising, again, because these kinds of positions are at a time of your career when you have another big, I call it another big project management on your shoulder, and that's called the family. And so women are reluctant to do that.
So going off of that, how do you maintain a healthy balance between career and family?
Well, it's a tough question. I got some advice once, and I heard what the person was telling me, and I've accepted it. And that person said, 2 out of 3 isn't bad. And what she meant is, if you think of your life, you have your family life, you have your career, your work, and then you have your social community involvement, cultural, friends, all of this. And at a given point of your life, any given point, you probably won't be able to do all 3. So you'll have 2, but it will change over your life. So there's a part of your life where I remember this part very well, where my life was my family and my work. I felt terrible because I've always liked to read, go to see plays, ballet, music. I didn't have time to do all of that other part. But now I do, because I don't have young children. Of course, when you're at university, it's your study and your social community involvement part. Until you have the family, you can focus on that. So over the course of a lifetime, it sort of balances itself, and you will get to taste all of it. But at any given point, probably only 2 out of 3 will be possible. The same thing, I see students often say, it would be very difficult to have a young family when I'm studying, and particularly if I want to take part in the activities of the university. So I got that advice early on. I thought, yes, that's probably right. Of course, now I have the ability to look over a longer period of time and see that indeed, this is what happens in life. So I've learned to think about 2 out of 3 is probably the most you'll be able to achieve at a given time, but all 3 will be available to you.
What do you think about mentorship and the importance of mentorship? And have you had any specific mentors that were important in your life?
I've had tons of mentors. We never talked about mentorship, though. They didn't know they were my mentors, or I might not even have known myself at the time. But I had tons of people, as I mentioned. I think I mentioned Bill Leggett. I can mention Herb Hobman, who was my postdoctoral mentor, professor. He won the Nobel Prize. He was an incredible mentor. I'll mention another one. Well, of course, here at McGill, my professor, Gabrielle Donnet, and her husband, José Donnet, were fantastic mentors. But there was another one. She probably would say, I was your mentor? I never knew. She was my TA in my crystallography class. And she was in a master's program. I was still undergraduate. And it was fantastic to see this young woman who looked like a young woman. She didn't look like somebody that I didn't want to be. When you're young, you don't want to look like your grandmother. So she looked like a young, bright woman. and she was my TA, and I look up to her, and I remember thinking, oh, maybe I could do that someday. Maybe I could be a TA in crystallography. That would be so cool. And so she was a mentor, but she never knew she was my mentor, nor did I realize at the time that she was a mentor. But I was watching everything she was doing and thinking, yeah, this is good. I have to learn how to do that. And I also think, now I have relationships of, we call them mentor-mentee. I don't call them mentor-mentee. I call them mentor-mentor, because I have some students here at McGill that I meet regularly, and they are mentoring me. They're mentoring me in what life looks like for a student today at McGill. What are the issues that you're facing, not only as a student, but as a person in this world that is quite challenging. And they make me see the world from their perspective, so it's great.
Have you ever tried to find that TA again?
Yes, I have. She probably, what I worry about is she probably got married and changed her name, and now I can't find her. Yes.
What advice do you have for someone who's interested in science or becoming a university president?
Well, for somebody interested in science, I would say explore. Explore your interests, explore situations where you can have a real taste of what it is, and whether you can see if this is something you'd be passionate for, something you'd be good at. So, for example, in our university, we have great programs of internship for our students, research internship, and it's a great way to get a sense of that world of science and research. But of course, many other opportunities. Many students launch their own initiatives to explore how they can get into the action, put what they're learning in the classroom into action. And I think that's a very important thing. As for university presidents, that's a tough one, because, it's normally not a career goal that we would have. It's something that most often come from doors that open to you, entering those doors, and again, seeing what you can do in these leadership position, how much you're a fit for it also, how much you can contribute, and you take it a step at a time. People often say there's no elevator to success. I'd say there's no elevator to leadership. You take it a step at a time, and each step allows you to learn more about what you can contribute, and learn more about yourself as well, and how you can work well with others, because leadership is very much a team activity. I often say leadership is a rally race, because you work with others. Each one has to do their part. Each one has to give their best. And it's important also to be able to pass the baton. As I mentioned, you're never alone as leader. There are a lot of other people who are there in the team. And it's important to know it's their time to lead. It's their role to lead right now. And in a university, it's particularly, I think, good to see all the leaders around, not only in the administration, but the leaders in our community, in our students, in various members of our community who are very much able and ready to take leadership on many challenges or many opportunities for the university.
What would you say to a woman trying to pursue a career in science or leadership?
I probably would give the same kind of advice, but also apart from taking it a step at a time and making sure that you're always open for learning, always open to explore and learn and contribute. Also, surround yourself with people who believe in what you can do and are there to nurture you, and also are very open and honest with you and will tell you, this year you're going to have to work on this. People are really there to help you achieve what they see as your potential. And it's interesting, I meet a lot of women in leadership position, and many of them will say that what they've accomplished is because other people believed in their potential far more than they believed themselves. They hadn't even seen their potential. Others had seen their potential and were helping them achieve it. I think that is very important, to be surrounded by people who are of that nature, positive, believe in your potential, and are going to help you. And frankly, you know, being in a position of leadership myself, I would say that there's nothing better than when you see a person who has so much potential and wants to pursue certain aspirations and saying yes, you know, and making sure that they are equipped to do that, and giving them what you can give them to help them equip. There will be many other people around them who will be also part of that team. But again, I think I'll come back to the concept of team. You're not alone. Even as an individual, if you have aspirations, you're never going to be able. There may be unusual cases. You know, maybe you're a writer will only work by yourself and so on. But most of the achievements you'll have in life, you'll have those achievements because there was a team of people around you who were there for you and were there to help you when things were maybe a little bit more difficult, and celebrate you when you were doing well, and give you good advice, wisdom, and also leur juste, comme on dit au Québec, will able also to tell you where you need to maybe learn more, make improvements.
Do you have any final thoughts?
You know, I have to say, it's incredible for me to come back to my alma mater. It's a fantastic institution, and I think I want McGill to be one of those bright spots in the world, a bright spot of a place where we are able to accomplish great things because we believe in the richness of people, we believe in the potential of the human being, and we believe in the richness of having people come to our university from many, many different backgrounds and bringing to us what they know, the way they can see the world, and helping us shape, I think, a better future for our world. And we all know our world needs people like that. I think it's possible to shape a good future for the world, but we need to be working on this as one of the most important team projects that planet Earth has ever seen. So it's great.